Hello, you're watching a replay of the live stream. Today we're talking about the top 5 recruitment mistakes by small and medium-sized businesses. And we're starting right now. My guest is Tania, who is the director of Talent Seed, an alternative recruitment company that makes recruitment skill accessible to small and medium-sized businesses. Talent Seed provides on-demand hiring experience and outsource DIY recruitment. She's been in the recruitment service for over 18 years across 8 countries and multiple industries. How are you, Tania?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Matt. It's good to see you.
Is there anything else you would like to add about yourself?
Not really. Other than the fact that I'm a scuba diver, that's about it.
To now. All right, then let's get to nitty-gritty. We're talking about the top 5 mistakes, recruiting mistakes that small businesses make. What do you think is the first one you would like to start with?
The first one is small businesses often don't know the market. So they just kind of go and put an ad out and they're actually a little bit oblivious to what's in the market. So an example of that is not knowing if there's a surplus of candidates or if there's a shortage of candidates. And the thing is, your approach should change completely on if you're going to get mass applications or if you're only going to get a handful. And so therefore they go in with an old-fashioned approach and don't find any candidates because it just doesn't match the current market. And just to give you a bit of a fair idea, currently the unemployment rate is 4.5%. Now, there'll be some industries where it's substantially worse than that. So if you're in one of those industries, you need to change your approach. And the way you're going to set up applications will be totally different if you think you can only, if you're going to go through a handful of CVs, you'll just ask them to email them to you. But if you're going to get 100 applicants, you need a system that's going to tell you which ones you should read and which ones you won't even bother reading. There's lots of systems out there. The one I use most often is one called Haystack, and I've set up a little questionnaire. The questionnaire has things like, are you legally entitled to work in New Zealand? Do you have any health issues that could impact on your ability to perform the role? Yeah, legally entitled to work in New Zealand. Yeah, do you have a criminal history or, anything pending? And immediately that might actually cull out some candidates, and you can use exactly the same questions for skill. So let's say you were looking for, just a role we're recruiting for at the moment is a welder. You might put, do you have your welding 2980 certificate? Yes or no? Simple as that. All of a sudden you're not opening a whole lot of applications that don't have it. So you can completely tailor them, and they save a small business hours in work, because often you normally only have to look at about a third of the applicants, and it gets rid of all of the, I hate to say it, the tryhards that actually just aren't qualified for your role.
So with this software systems you're talking about, is it a cloud-based software that anyone can get it, or is it just available to your company?
No, completely. It's designed for small businesses. So I pay $89 a time plus GST every time I need to use it. So every time I need to use it, per role I'm advertising. So I just go, okay, this is the role I'm advertising for, load it up, here are the questions I want to ask, $89. As simple as that. So it's really, really easy for small businesses, and they well and truly save $89 just in the hours of work they haven't had to do, because the systems actually help them cull the candidates. Now, I want to say that with some caution. We've just used it at the moment on a role where we had 105 applications, and we've only probably had to look at 30 of them because the rest just didn't have what we needed. But you would never use that system for a role where there's a real skill shortage, because if there's a real skill shortage, you actually want to be easy to do business with as such. And that means easy to do business with relates to recruitment as well, and that you would not ask people to jump through hoops if there's hardly any of them. So this is what I mean about not knowing the market, is that you need to tailor your approach depending on what the market is.
Yeah, 100%. Is there a way to simplify the process? Like, how do you know what the questions to ask? to work out what market are you in?
I mean, what I often do is I just get on Seek and Trade Me, and just find out whatever, how much competition is there right now for the job you're hiring for. So let's say you're hiring for an accounts person, and let's say accounts payable, just to make it easy. Seek and Trade Me, accounts payable. How many ads are there right now in your local area? And if you've got 20 other roles that are immediately in your local area, you've got a bit of a problem. It's you can find out pretty easily, how much competition there is.
So, is there any statistics or any website, any other resource that small businesses can use to navigate themselves in the market and see what's out there?
Yeah, I'm listed on Seek, and they send me updates every so often as to what's happening in the market. One I saw just earlier today said that ads this year, job advertising has risen by 4.4%.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 4.4% more jobs out there, everyone is facing a bit more competition right now. With 4.5% unemployment, there's competition for almost everything, if you know what I mean. But there's some roles where I think small businesses sometimes don't realise they're looking for what we call a purple squirrel, which means the person doesn't exist. So they might need to compromise, and they're oblivious to that. So they waste, a month looking for someone that just isn't even out there. So,
say you were talking about, as an example, an accountant's payable. How can I engage the demand? Say, if I would get 20 CVs, is it too many, or 100 is too many? Like, what's from your experience?
You actually can't. You can't put a number on it because roles vary so massively. Like if you're doing a call centre role, you will well and truly get over 100. If you're doing anything like, kind of customer services, accounts, you will well and truly get over 100. If you're doing retail, customer service type roles, you'll probably still get about 50 or 60. If you're doing anything that's a tradesperson right now, you'd be lucky to get 10. So, I mean, look, most people do know. It's like if they're a tradie and they're, an electrician, they're trying to hire another electrician, they know that there's a shortage. It's when they're hiring a generic role that they are often oblivious. They just go, I want an accounts person, and they're a little bit oblivious to what's happening. I mean, I suppose speaking to someone like me, you get a bit of a feel for what's happening out there at the moment. The problem small businesses have is if they went and used a regular recruitment agency, they could probably get an answer straight away, but most of them can't afford them because they charge such exorbitant fees.
How much do they charge on average? What's the market rate for a general market rate for a general role? How much do they charge on average?
Most of them charge about 12 to 15%, and I've just got to get my calculator out for that one. But let's just say that the standard rate is 15%, you can get it discounted. But let's say you were doing a $50,000 role and they charged 15%, it's a $7,500 fee on a $50,000 role. If you went to a recruitment agency, as I've said, I'm alternative, not an agency. So, and that's why small businesses don't use them. It's not in their budget. It's a huge commitment, which is why they try to DIY, which is fantastic. But there's just things they've got them to put in place. As you said, there's cloud-based systems out there now that can help you out. Some of those cloud-based systems have some questions already in there. Culling questions, do you have a criminal history? Do you have any health issues? So you can you don't have to come up with them from, scratch.
All right. Do you want to move to the second mistake?
Yeah. Yes. So the second mistake I see a lot of small and medium businesses do is not being candidate centric. Now, what I mean by this is candidate-centric means that the focus is on the candidate, not what you want as a business. Now, I know when you're hiring, it's really tempting to say, I want this and I want that, and for them to be successful here, they've got to have this. But the reality is, in an employment market with 4.5% unemployment, the candidates currently have the power, not businesses. So I find that businesses are still putting adverts up that sound like a shopping list. Exactly what I just said. We're hiring. So what? Seriously, in this market. And they put ads up and go, for you to be successful in this role, you must have. And I'm like, there's no attractiveness factor at all to the candidate. And there's only about, at any given time, there's only about 20% of people actually looking for jobs. So that's 80% of people that aren't. And an employment market of 4.5%, you really need to focus on what we call passive candidates, where they're not actively looking, but they're the browsers. They're the people that will go into a shop and still come out having purchased something. They're a browser, but they didn't necessarily go in to look to actually buy something. But they might have had a bad day at work. They might just be browsing through Seek or Trade Me. And if they saw something that really grabbed them, they'd be interested, right? But the problem is, the way most recruitment ads are written, the very first thing that businesses talk about is themselves. And I don't know, maybe I should use yourself as an example. Let's say you were putting a recruitment ad up and you might start talking about Easy Freight, and you might start saying, Easy Freight, this, that, and the other. We started in here. We've got a team of this. We have a really high standard of customer services. So all the candidate sees when they see this job is a blurb about you, and you've got to flip it on its head. You've got to have them. The first thing they read is why they would want that role. What's in it for them? What benefits are for them? And they don't need to know who it's for until later on. So it's opposite.
What's an example of a good ad?
It's probably easier to show you one. Boy, oh boy, I'm just thinking of ads. All I could do is direct you to some I've got online at the moment.
Just say one sentence. What's a good starting like paragraph or sentence to catch the attention?
Okay. We normally use the words you or you'll so that we're talking directly at them. So it might be, you're an experienced freight forwarder who would love to work in a small team dedicated to excellent customer service. So that we help them visualize what the role is. Very first thing, help them visualize what the role is. And then, you're this, you're that. I did a role recently where they were tapping into a market that they knew the people will work really, really hard, and the benefit of that role, because you've got to know what's unique about your role and what the differentiator is. You've got to be able to answer why someone would work for you compared to a competitor. And if you can't answer that, then it's really hard to put kind of a differentiator or any sort of benefits in there. So this particular business had really, really common long hours and a lot of bureaucracy. So we were quite irreverent with our approach, and it was like sick of corporate BS. And it literally was the people that would look at it were the people that were going, yeah, I'm done with all the politics and the bureaucracy. And then it was, do you want to, live to work, not work to live? So it was things that made people tap into those differentiators. And people go, wow, this sounds really different. And then they read on. And it's not until further down the ad that they find out who it's for.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Some businesses may think that if I display the good qualities of the company, for example, we have been the highest or the most rewarded company in New Zealand. We had the most awards. We've been the top 10 and this and that. They're kind of bragging about them, but at the same time, a potential candidate could think, wow, they're so popular. They've been well regarded by their clients. And would it actually improve the number of quality applicants, or is it still going to scare them?
No, look, it's really important stuff. It's just that you don't need to say it first. The reason being is if someone is an active candidate in that they are actively looking, they are still going to read down the ad to find out who that is. So they'll get to that information that you're highly respected in the industry and you've won all these awards. Like it's definitely valuable, but it just doesn't need to be said first. And if you're a passive candidate, then you're not actually looking for a job, you're just kind of keeping your options open, then it will not capture you because you aren't in it you're not actively looking for a job. So you're not actually interested in them right now. You're interested in what can you get. So yeah, it means that by talking about the company first, you're really only talking to those active candidates, which are the minority.
I see. And for those that have just joined us, we're talking about the top 5 recruiting mistakes that small businesses make. And my guest today is Tania Howard from Talent Seed. Feel free to ask any questions during our talk and we'll be happy to answer them. Tania, would you like to move to the mistake number 3, please?
Great. The next mistake is not gathering kind of critical information kind of early on in the process. And what I mean by this is I find that small businesses have a tendency to receive CVs, look at these CVs and invite people in purely on what they see on that CV. And it's nothing more frustrating kind of as an advisor to small businesses to have small businesses go and make an offer to someone just for argument's sake, to say $65,000 and the person's bottom line was $80,000. And I'm like, there is no way you should have, gone through 2 interviews and reference checks and wasted all that time and energy to find out they weren't even in your ballpark. So for me, phone screening is absolutely critical. That once you've got CVs, regardless of whether it's a short supply role, as we've said before, or a surplus of candidates, is just to have that what we call a phone screen in the industry, but to have a short conversation which finds out what their motivators are, what sort of salary they're looking for, even location. In Auckland, it's important, especially to make sure that they don't live, in Albany, but the job's in South Auckland, because they just won't last long. It's what we call red flags or showstoppers. Anything that when you go to offer, they'll turn it down. You need to know that on the first contact, not at the end of the process.
So would you specify all these requirements in the advertisement?
You do, but you still. I mean, honestly, we had a job ad up recently, and we were offering $22 an hour, and we've still got someone that's insisting they want $25 an hour. So it doesn't stop people; it just doesn't. So you've kind of often got to go through those sorts of things, quite a number of times. And even I'll ring people, I'll ask that, and then they've got them in front of me in an interview, I'll ask them again. Because you get people that will tell you something on the phone because they just want to get in front of you, and then they get in front of you, and then their story's changed. It's it's kind of good having multiple touch points, with candidates.
And how long do you wait before you start assessing? Like, do you wait a week, 1 day before the phone screen?
Immediately. Actually, that isn't a mistake on my top 5 list, but worth talking about it. It is definitely a mistake because in the old days, people would have a closing date and they'd just wait till all the applications came in, then they'd start going through them. Quite frankly, if you wait, you'll miss the first people. So the people that were, the people that first applied, by the time you've got the last ones in, 4.5% unemployment rate, the first ones have gone. So to me, I have, I've got a whole lot of recruiters. We all kind of work from home or on demand. And as soon as applications come in, they start assessing them. Unfortunately, things like shortlists don't really happen much anymore because, it's just, do they meet the requirements? Do they have the skills? Do they have the motivation? Do they have the experience? Yes or no? put them forward. Yeah, I've seen too many people sit and wait for a comparison and then they've lost the first candidate.
Fair enough. So basically, would you say, if I'm a small business, would you handle it on my behalf, or how would the small business handle this assessment if they've got 20 applicants? Can they ask their own staff, their own internal staff, to do phone calls? So does it have to be done by someone else?
No, it doesn't. So, I mean, I actually offer people templates which we design for their role. We've got a generic one, but we can also tailor it a little bit for the role. And they just run through the questions on a sheet. They should capture them as well, because if you speak to 5, 6 people, you start mixing them up at the end of those phone calls. So you really need to capture what was said. I type it as I talk. So I'll speak to someone on the phone and I'll just be typing their response, as they speak. It doesn't need to be all grammatically correct or anything. You just need to get it down so that when you look through the candidates after you've spoken to a few, you remember each conversation and why they differed.
Can you record the phone call?
You probably can. I'm sure you probably can if you've got the technology, but you've probably also got to be a bit careful of the Privacy Act there, is that you would actually have to get permission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it just a matter of saying, I know when you call some banks, they ask you, please be aware this phone call will be recorded for customer service. So can I just warn them without actually asking them a written permission that this is going to be recorded?
Look, you probably could, but the problem you've got there, Max, is that then when you've got, say, 6 people and you've got, I remember these were all good. You've got to listen to them all to find out which candidate was which again. Where with me, what I do is I take all these notes, and at the end of the phone call, I write just a 1 paragraph that is a summary of what I thought about that person and, how they fit the role or any concerns I might have. And then all I've got to do is go back to that 1 paragraph and it will jog my memory. I don't have to re-listen to an entire conversation So that's kind of more valuable than it's, saves you probably more time.
I've just remembered one of the questions a friend was asking. Is there such a thing as the most important part of the information that a small business owner have to display to attract the right candidate? For example, is it just all about the salary nowadays? Or is it,
no.
Do you have to be creative with the role, say, customer, happiness, something?
Every job should have a unique selling proposition. Every job. And I go in there and I ask customers, because I write ads for people, and sometimes that's all of our involvement is in the recruitment process, is purely just writing an ad for them, and then they, do their own. But it's very much tapping into what is your unique selling proposition for this role? Why would someone want this role compared to a role, down the road? What benefits will they have? How will they learn? What systems would they use? Who would they work alongside? And we just ask a lot of questions. And look, a lot of small business owners, they've never thought of it from that perspective before. And we just literally ask those sort of questions, makes people think about it. And at the end of it, we, generally am able to come up with a unique selling proposition for the role. And then the ad is written from a marketing perspective. That's what people forget when they're recruiting. You are marketing. It's what you're marketing is a job. And that's what you were selling. And that day you were selling that job. And people just completely forget. They think, oh no, but I want this. But then to be, they've got to have that. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but it's not attractive if that's your approach. So yeah, your friend come up with a USP.
And what about the salary? Is it best to advertise, say, the exact salary, like 50,000 or up to 50,000 or between 45 and 55?
Yeah, it's always good to have a band, because if you advertise, say, 50,000 and you get someone that's actually just nearly there, and you might have to spend a bit more time helping them kind of get there, but there's been no other candidates and they're close, but actually you'd really rather offer them 47 because they're not there yet. If you've got an advertiser at 50, all of a sudden they go, but you advertised it at 50. So you're always better to offer a band, and it's dependent on where their experience is. But a lot of people in New Zealand, it's quite interesting in New Zealand, we don't advertise what we're not. I want to say what we're selling, what we're actually paying. We don't advertise it that often. The crazy thing is, ads with salaries on them get more click-throughs. So more people look at them if you put the salary on there. So it's absolutely a good idea to do so. But what you must consider is if you've got people already in your business that could possibly see that, you don't want to cause any internal issues. Going, they just offered $28 an hour and I'm only on 25. Do you know what I mean? So, so there's things to consider that you just have to take into account.
All right, and if you've just joined us, my guest today is Tania Howard from Talent Seed. We're talking about the top 5 recruiting mistakes that small business and medium-sized businesses make, and probably you do as well. Make sure you subscribe because we have interesting guests every week. Tania, would you like to discuss the mistake number 4?
Yeah, mistake number 4 is this is just an experience thing with people having a bias when they recruit. And what I mean by this is that, if you're watching a movie, there is a term that is called suspending belief. And it's what people naturally do when you watch something that's quite fantastical or completely off the wall. You have to suspend your belief when you go into that movie to actually be able to enjoy the movie. Yeah? Because otherwise you're going, this is rubbish, that's not real life. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You actually have to do that in an interview. And instead of suspending disbelief, as it's called in the acting world, we call it suspending belief or suspending doubt. So what I find happens is you'll get a candidate come in, people take one look at them and go, oh, they're not going to fit here. Bam. Doesn't matter what they say in the interview thereafter, somebody has already made a call and they just can't get past that. And the trouble is with biases is most people don't admit they've got a bias, so you don't actually know you've got it. Yeah, and I'll talk about a couple of biases. There's 2 that are quite commonly talked about. One is the halo effect and one is the horn effect. The halo effect is someone that comes in, they look like you, maybe a similar age, maybe even you can tell that you'd probably be friends with them and you enjoy the chat and you could consider having a beer with them on a Friday night at the pub. That's called the halo effect, when you go, I really like this person, so I'm going to employ them. Now, the problem is because you've kind of had a chat to them in a perhaps more relaxed way, just because they're a nice person and you like them does not mean they're suitable for the job. Yeah. Now you get the opposite of that, which is what we call the horn effect. When someone walks in and they're perhaps from a different background from you, from maybe different race or ethnicity or something that you haven't had much exposure to, or you've actually got biases about already, and you just go, oh no, they're not going to fit here. And I mean, this even happens with age. You might have a really young, funky company with a whole lot of 30-year-olds in it, and somebody rocks on up who's in their late 40s. Oh yeah, they're not going to fit. So you're kind of pigeonholing people before you actually, and you shut down. You're asking them questions, but you're just not even really giving them a chance. So you've got to find a balance of, yes, using your intuition, yes, looking at them and going, this is my initial thoughts about that person, but being able to put that aside, ask some really good interview questions and be open to, to being able to have the person impress you. I mean, I've had it happen. I mean, I don't even want to count how many people I've interviewed over the years. It'd be thousands. I've had countless times where someone has walked in and you think, yeah, now we're talking, and then as they go through the interview, they're not able to provide any proof or evidence of things they've done. And at the end of it, you realise that actually you really wanted them to do well, but they're just not going to cut it. And then you have the opposite, where someone walks in and you go, I don't think you're a fit. And, I can't see myself having a beer with you or a wine with you on Friday night. But they say some fantastic things. So at the end of it, you're like, yeah, you know your stuff, or you've got the right attitude, or, So I just find I get a lot of small businesses that say, the one that drives me nuts, Max, is, we used to have this guy called Richard here, and Richard was a pain in the bum, and he just reminded me of Richard. Can't hire him because he reminds me of Richard. And you're like, seriously? No, did he just hold his mouth wrong, or did he, it's because he just had some sort of mannerism, perhaps, that reminded him of someone else. He's a totally different person, and if they had managed to suspend their belief, they could have remained open-minded and ensured they got some evidence and proof that enabled them to make a more logical and not emotive decision.
Do you think it's a good idea to have someone else helping you and sitting next to you to do the interview like together?
Yeah, there is. It is. I mean, a lot of small businesses unfortunately don't have that luxury because they are small. But if you do have that luxury, it's actually an excellent idea because somebody else may notice things that you don't, or you're busy taking notes, and while we're on that subject, take notes for exactly the same reason as what we talked about earlier. When you're talking to a dozen people, they start getting mixed up. But someone may pick up on something that you just didn't, or have a slightly different perspective. So it's great if you can do it.
And Tania, how common it is and how valuable it is for small businesses to do 1, 2, 3 interviews. Say if the first one is in the office, the second one is in the cafe. And I keep hearing, especially in the States, they've got some startups suggest to take out their spouse for dinner as well. Is it just a gimmick, or is it valuable to go out for dinner?
The problem we've got is we're in a really candidate scarce market, 4.5% unemployment. And it's a really lovely idea, but those things take time. So if you are recruiting for a role where those candidates also have multiple other opportunities or are actively looking, by the time you organise all that, they're gone. They've moved on. They've already had a job offer. So a lot of that depends on the level of the role and how much competition there is for the role. Now, if you were applying the whole take their spouse out for dinner, that's excellent if someone is moving cities for the role and the spouse is actually the decision maker as well as the person. Or if they've got to move across Auckland and change schools, or, then it's really important. Or if it's a really senior role, you wouldn't do that for a more junior role, and you wouldn't do it for a role where while you're doing all that, the candidate's already gone because they've got other offers.
What about the mistake number 5?
Number 5 is I find small businesses aren't particularly good at their interview skills. The reason this is important, and I'm not sure if they realise, but an unstructured interview, which is the cafe style interview or just the sit down and have a chat type interview, it only has 30% validity as far as saying there's only 30% chance the person you interviewed will actually be any good in that job. Now, that's a pretty huge failure rate, right? 30% that you can say that person would actually be good in the job. So the proper process, more best practice process is what we call a structured interview, which you would have also heard of as a behavioural interview. Now, scaringly, that only takes you up to 62% certainty that someone is okay in the job. Still a pretty high failure rate, but we're human. We insist on talking to people. We insist on eyeballing people that we want to work with. So no matter, there are other things out that are more accurate of someone's ability to perform, but we're human, so we want to see someone. But you're much better doing a structured behavioural interview. Now, all that means is you've just got to have better quality questions. And so your questions should start with the questions that need proof or evidence of things that people have done in the past, not what they would do in the future. So we're not looking for scenarios. We're not looking for, in this situation, what would you do? Because any grad or anyone that's really smart will give you the right answer, and it doesn't mean that they will act like that. So your questions should start with either tell me about a time or give me an example of, and give me an example of a time. And pretty much if they don't start with those two, they're not a behavioural question. So the other mistake around interview questions, I see a lot of small businesses saying, well, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? That's kind of a question that's been around for years, right? The problem you've got is if you've got someone that's got really good self-knowledge, you'll get good answers. But not everyone has really good self-knowledge. And if you get a candidate that's like slightly narcissistic candidate, but it's just rubbish. You won't get any decent sort of responses, or nothing you can use either. So yeah, find yourself some behavioural questions.
So do you do this only in person, or do you start doing this interview over the phone?
That's a great question, Max. We do that partly over the phone as well. Over the phone, the reason what you want to do is you want to spend a short length of time to find out who you really want to actually bring in for interview. So you probably spend 10, 20 minutes on the phone so that you're not looking at 12 people, you're only looking at 5 or something, face to face. But what we do is it will add some behavioural questions in, but we might only do 2. So, just the biggest things about that job, we might ask a behavioural question right, in the phone screen, and then the full interview is 80% behavioural questions.
So where do I get the list of these questions, Tania?
We build interview guides for people, so people can come to us and say this is what's important to us, and again we can help them build the tools. You can probably Google, I imagine there's a few. There used to be some really good free sites. They seem to have disappeared, unfortunately, but I'm sure Googling or giving me a call and I'll give you some questions.
You've got a fancy website. Yeah. Do you have anything on your website? Any free information? No?
Yeah, I do actually. On my website, free information, we've got a checklist. Yeah, checklist for recruitment, all things you must do. So we've got that, and we also do have like a PDF on interview questions, but hard to explain because interview questions are tailored for the job you're applying for, right? Wouldn't ask exactly the same questions for every job. I had an old client years ago. I gave him a whole lot of questions for an accounts person, and he wanted to use them when he hired a salesperson. I'm like, no, they're completely different questions. You're going to hire an accounts person if you use these questions. Yeah. So I do have like a guideline, which is to help you develop your question. Yeah. But the thing to go back to is to look at the values and behaviours of someone that you want in that business. And then you build questions that start with, tell me about a time, or give me an example of a time that they have actually done that behaviour or lived that value without actually naming the value. So I know this is going to sound weird, but let's just say a common thing that we ask for in New Zealand is for adaptability. We want people to be adaptable. So you could say, tell me about a time, but we don't want to say that you've been adaptable, because that becomes a leading question and they know what the question's about. So you have to ask that question without that word. So what we do is the question we would ask instead is, tell me about a time where, your days turned to custard. What did you do? And then you get a sense of their adaptability without having told them that's what it's about.
Tania, we've got a question from Alex. Can you see it on your screen? Alex is asking, do you think there is a big pay gap between males and females in New Zealand? And has it gone better within the last 10 years? It's
really funny. I very rarely see the pay gap. I think when you see the pay gap, it's mainly in the big corporates. It's a difficult one, because let's say somebody comes to me for a job and I say to them, what are you earning at the moment? What are you wanting in your new job? What's your bottom line? And we ask all those sort of questions. Now, I might have one candidate that's a male and one candidate that's a female. And the reality is a female will sometimes have a slightly lower expectation, or they just don't push themselves as much. So females frequently don't apply for roles unless they can tick off. If they can't tick off everything on their ad, They often just don't even apply. Where males, the behaviour is going, I can do 80% of that, that's all right. So, yeah, it's an awkward one because supposedly it's out there. You see it in the papers all the time. People say it's there, but it's a really hard thing to get evidence of unless you're probably in a big corporate and you've got access to everybody's pay. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, there's obviously things like nursing and home help and teaching and things where there are a lot more females, and that has kept a lot of those salaries down. And I think a lot of that is what affects the statistics that you see out in the field.
And another thought that I had is we're led to believe that everyone is unique, everyone is special, but for some reason everyone has to have a very similar salary. So two things just don't add up. Like if everyone is unique, everyone has their own set of skills, and everyone has their own experience and backgrounds, but you can't just put everyone in the same box. Yeah. So as you said, it's very hard to find statistics and relevant data to work out whether there is a gap. But somehow, for the government and other statisticians did manage to. I think the recent there was a recent news article saying there is at least 10% pay gap or 15% pay gap. So that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I'd love to see some statistics because we keep on getting told it's there, but no one really gives you the breakdown. But I do think men are much better at selling themselves as well. You know, women will go in and they'll go, oh yeah, 85,000 will be fine, and you'll get a guy that is exactly the same ability that goes, nah, I'm worth 100k. So yeah, it doesn't help. And saying that, I've got a friend years and years ago. I mean, this is so many years ago, you can tell by the salary I'm about to tell you, but she was on about 36,000 at the time. And in the day when you still got pay slips put on your desk each day. And she just picked up the pay slip, didn't even look at the name because it was on her desk, opened it up and went, 50,000, I'll get a pay rise. No one told me about that. And then looked at the name and went, oh my God, I opened my colleague's pay slip. Now he was exactly the same position as her, and he was earning would have been nearly 50% more. So there are things like that happen.
But in terms of recruitment, you can't obviously you have to judge each candidate on their own merits, right? You obviously have to allow the budget.
That's exactly it. I mean, as you said, if someone's got a certain skill, all you can do is offer to pay them judged on what you believe that skill to be. Perhaps there is a bias out there where people devalue a woman a little bit more, but you never say it. I mean, I've never ever in my 18 years in recruitment, I've never heard someone ever say, I'm going to pay that person less because they're a woman. So it's probably insidious if it is there, and people don't do it purposely. But wouldn't it be great to see some more stats?
So we've discussed 5 mistakes that small businesses make, and how does your company help? What actually do you do in particular?
Yeah, I suppose we do 2 things. We build do-it-yourself recruitment kits for people, so that we build a kit that gives them everything they need, the questions, the process, and all of that, so they can just go and do the recruitment themselves. We also do outsourced recruitment, where we act as their outsourced recruitment arm, and then we do the recruitment on their behalf. So that means processing the applications that come through, coming up with shortlisted candidates, doing the reference check, doing everything for them remotely. And we don't charge by placement, we charge by time taken. And it's a lot more cost effective for small businesses because it comes in at about a third of what an agency would cost. It's just like having your own on-demand recruiter, as and when you need us.
And what's the best way to contact you? Is it just the website? Do you have an email?
I suppose. I'm just Tania at talentseed.co.nz. Pretty easy. So either email me at tania@talentseed.co.nz, phone numbers 027 289 2168, or just go to the website.
Awesome. Thanks for your knowledge, Tania. It was very interesting. And if people have any other questions, they can leave a comments now, and we'll address it later. And thank you, Tania. Hopefully we'll see you again, and all the best in your small business growth.
Thank you. And thanks very much, Max, and all the best for your business growth.
All right.
Okay. See you later.